The massive ship Eternal Unity moved slowly through the darkness of space. Its silver hull reflected the light of distant stars as it carried the most important beings in the galaxy. Inside the ship, Ambassador Tommen sat in his quarters reading reports that made his hands shake. The holographic display showed images from a dead world at the edge of known space. Strange buildings with smooth walls and curved doorways filled the screen. The architecture was unlike anything the galaxy had seen in 300 years. But Taman knew what he was looking at. These were human ruins, a soft chime announced. An incoming message. The face of So-Young appeared on the screen. She was young for an explorer, barely past her first century of life. Her excitement was clear as she spoke. Ambassador Tommen, you need to see what we found down here. The preservation is incredible. The buildings look like they were abandoned yesterday, not centuries ago. Taman felt cold fear creep up his spine. So-Young, get your team away from that place immediately. Do not touch anything. Do not enter any structures. The young explorer looked confused. But sir, these discoveries could change everything we know about the lost human civilization. There are symbols here, technology, maybe even records of what happened to them. That is exactly why you need to leave now, Tommen said firmly. Pack your equipment and return to your ship. I am sending you new coordinates for your next survey mission. After ending the transmission, Taman sat in silence for several minutes. He had hoped this day would never come. The galaxy had lived in peace for 3 centuries because everyone had forgotten the real reason why human space was forbidden. Most species believed humans were extinct, victims of some cosmic disaster or plague that wiped them out completely. Taman knew better. He was old enough to remember the stories his grandfather had told him. Stories about the time before the Great Silence. Humans walked among the stars and other species learned to fear their quiet and intelligence. The ambassador made his way to the council chambers. The Great Hall was already filled with representatives. From dozens of species, their voices created a constant buzz of conversation as they discussed trade agreements, territorial disputes, and resource allocation. None of them understood that their peaceful galaxy might be about to change forever. Elder Byung-ho stood at the center of the chamber. His ancient form was supported by a walking stick made from the bone of some long-extinct creature. His eyes, still sharp despite his great age, found Taman in the crowd. "We have a problem," Taman said as he approached the elder. "The human ruins," Byung-ho replied. It was not a question. No. So-Young found them on Kepler 7739. The buildings are intact. If other explorers hear about this, they will want to investigate. Human space directly. Elder Byung-ho closed his eyes. Then we must remind them why that would be a mistake. The elder called for attention, and the chamber slowly fell silent. Representatives from across the galaxy turned to listen. Most had never heard Byung-ho speak about the old times. 300 years ago, our galaxy was a very different place, the elder began. We were younger then, more aggressive, more curious about our neighbors. We explored every system, contacted every species, and believed that the universe belonged to all of us equally. A young representative from the Veltari supremacy spoke up. "Elder, with respect, what does ancient history have to do with current affairs?"
Yes.
"Because that ancient history is about to become very current," Byung-ho replied. "Tell me, young one, what do you know about humans?" "They were a species that lived in the quarantine zone. They died out centuries ago from some kind of plague or war. Their space is forbidden because it might still be contaminated. That is what we tell the young ones," Byung-ho said. "But some of us remember the truth. Humans did not die out. They chose to leave." The chamber erupted in surprised voices. Representatives demanded explanations, proof, clarification. Elder Byung-ho raised his hand for silence. "The humans were not like us," he continued. "They did not think like us. Where we saw problems, they saw puzzles to solve. Where we saw enemies, they saw challenges to overcome. Where we saw impossibilities, they saw opportunities for innovation." Taman watched the faces around him. Most looked confused or disbelieving. A few of the older representatives had gone very pale. "The first contact with humans happened on a world called New Geneva," Byung-ho said. They were peaceful, curious, and eager to learn about other species. They asked many questions about our technology, our biology, our cultures. We thought they were simply friendly. "What changed?" asked a representative from the Kethrali homeworld. "We began to realize that humans did not just ask questions. They remembered the answers. Every piece of information they gathered was stored, analyzed, and used to understand how things worked. Within 50 years of first contact, human technology had advanced by centuries." The elder paused to let this sink in. But that was not the frightening part. The frightening part was that they began to understand us better than we understood ourselves. They could predict our decisions, anticipate our needs, and solve our problems before we even knew we had them. "That sounds helpful," said the Veltari. "Representative, it was at first," Byung-ho agreed. "But then we realized something troubling. If humans could predict our behavior so accurately, what did that mean for our independence? Our privacy? Our security?" Taemin remembered the stories his grandfather had told him. Stories about human diplomats who always seemed to know what other species wanted before they asked. Stories about human traders who always had exactly the right goods at exactly the right time. Stories about human scientists who could solve problems that had puzzled other species for generations. The final incident happened on a world called Epsilon Eridani, Byung-ho continued. A group of Veltari explorers found what they thought was an abandoned human outpost. They decided to investigate and claim it for their empire. "What happened to them?" Taemin asked, though he already knew the answer. "They were returned to Veltari space 3 days later. Their ships were intact, their crews were unharmed, but their memories of the incident were completely gone. The only evidence of what happened was a message from the human government. The chamber was completely silent now. Even the youngest representatives seemed to understand that they were hearing something important. The message was simple," Byung-ho said. "Humanity thanked us for our friendship over the years, explained that they had realized their presence, and the galaxy was causing problems for other species. They announced that they would be withdrawing to their own space and would appreciate being left alone." "That was 300 years ago," Taemin said. "And now we have proof that they are still there." Elder Byung-ho nodded slowly. "The question is, what do we do with that knowledge? Do we pretend we never found those ruins? The quarantine around human space? Or do we prepare for the possibility that someone might decide to investigate further?" The Veltari representative stood up. "Surely you are not suggesting that we should be afraid of one species. The galaxy has grown strong over the past 3 centuries. We have better technology, larger fleets, more powerful weapons." "Yes," Byung-ho said quietly. "And the humans have had 300 years to study us, learn about our new technology, and prepare for the day when someone would forget why human space was forbidden." He thought about Saw Young and her team exploring ruins on a dead world. He thought about the message that would soon spread through the galaxy about the discovery of intact human structures. And he thought about the young. Aggressive species who had never heard the stories about why humans chose isolation. The galaxy had lived in peace for 3 centuries because everyone had forgotten the real reason to fear human space. Now that peaceful time was about to end, and Taemin wondered if any of them would live to see another 300 years of quiet. Captain Dongwoo stood on the bridge of his flagship Iron Talon and stared at the star charts displayed before him. The forbidden zone known as human space stretched across 12 solar systems, marked with warning beacons that had broadcast the same message for 3 centuries. No entry, no exceptions. Quarantine in effect. Dongwoo had built his reputation on ignoring rules that stood between him and profit. His fleet had conquered 17 worlds in the past decade, each victory. Adding to his legend among the Veltari supremacy, now intelligence reports suggested that human space contained untapped resources and possibly ancient technology from the extinct human civilization. "Captain, the Council has expressly forbidden any approach to the quarantine zone," said his second-in-command, Commander Naeong. She was young for her rank but had proven herself in several battles. "So the Council fears ghosts and old stories," Dongwoo replied. "My grandfather told me tales about humans, too. They were supposed to be these brilliant, dangerous creatures who could read minds and predict the future. But where are they now?" Dead for 300 years, that is where... The captain turned to address his bridge crew. We have the finest fleet in Veltari space. 12 dreadnoughts, 47 cruisers, and over 300 support vessels. If any humans survive their extinction event, they will be primitive savages living in caves and ruins. Engineer Hajian looked up from her console. Sir, the sensor readings from this distance are strange. The systems inside human space appear to be generating some kind of interference pattern. Probably just radiation from whatever disaster killed. Them off, Dongwu said dismissively. Nothing our shields cannot handle. The fleet moved toward the human space border. As they approached, their long-range sensors began displaying increasingly chaotic readings. What should have been clear images of planets and space stations became fuzzy and distorted. Captain, I am losing sensor contact with the inner systems, reported Communications Officer Ginwu. The interference is getting stronger. Switch. 2 backup sensors, Dongwu ordered. Already tried, sir. Same result. It is like something is actively blocking our scans. Dongwu frowned. This was not what he had expected. Dead civilizations did not generate sensor interference. But he had come too far to turn back now. His reputation and the promise of riches lay beyond that border. All ships prepare for entry into human space. Battle stations. The massive fleet crossed the invisible line that marked the quarantine zone. Immediately, their sensors went completely dark, beyond a range of a few thousand kilometers. They were flying blind into unknown territory. Sir, this does not feel right, Nayoung said quietly. Maybe we should send a small scout force first. Nonsense. We go in with full force, or not at all. Fear is what keeps other species away from these resources. The first target was a world called Kepler 44b. Long-range scans taken from outside. The quarantine zone had suggested massive industrial complexes on the surface. As the fleet approached, they began to see structures that confirmed the intelligence reports. Captain, I am detecting huge manufacturing facilities, Jinwu reported. The scale is incredible. These installations could supply the entire galaxy with finished goods. Dongwu smiled. Now they will supply the Veltari supremacy. Begin landing operations. Invasion began smoothly. Dongwu's forces established 3 separate beachheads on different continents. The industrial facilities appeared to be abandoned, with no signs of current habitation. Automated systems were still running, but they seemed to be operating on programs that had been running for centuries. It is like they just walked away one day, reported Commander Sumin from the surface. The factories are still producing goods, but no one is collecting them. Storage facilities are full to capacity. Any sign of the former inhabitants? Dongwu asked. Negative, sir. But the architecture is definitely designed for human-sized beings. The doorways, stairs, and control panels all match the specifications from the old databases. As the first week passed, Dongwu began to relax. The invasion was proceeding exactly as planned. His forces had secured 3 worlds and were preparing to move on to the next system. The promised riches were already being loaded into cargo ships. But Engineer Hajian had begun to notice problems. It's small things at first. Weapons systems would occasionally misfire during routine tests. Shield generators would experience brief power fluctuations. Navigation computers would need to be recalibrated more often than usual. Captain, I think we may have a problem, she reported during the daily briefing. Our equipment is experiencing an unusual number of minor malfunctions. Define unusual, Dongwu said. Normal failure rates for our systems are about 2% per month. We are seeing failure rates of 15% in just 1 week. Probably just the effects of whatever radiation killed off the humans, suggested Nayoung. I thought so too, Hajian replied. But the failures are not random. They seem to be targeting specific systems at specific times. Dongwu leaned forward. What do you mean? Well, sir, yesterday, our long-range sensors failed, just as we were about to scan the next system. This morning, our quantum communication array went down right before we were scheduled to report back to headquarters. And an hour ago, the weapons targeting system on Dreadnought 7 malfunctioned just as they were conducting a test firing. Captain considered this information. Are you suggesting that someone is sabotaging our equipment? I am suggesting that these failures are too convenient to be coincidental. Ginwu spoke up from his station. Sir, I have been analyzing our communication logs. There are gaps in our quantum network transmissions. It's messages that should take microseconds to send are taking several seconds. Equipment failure? Dongwu asked. That is what I thought at first. But when I examined the delay patterns, I found something strange. The delays are not random. They follow a pattern, as if something is intercepting our messages, analyzing them, and then allowing them to continue. Na Young looked worried. Captain, are you suggesting that someone is reading our communications? I am suggesting that someone is reading, copying, and studying our communications before we even know they have been sent. The bridge fell silent. Everyone understood the implications. If someone was intercepting their messages, they knew everything about the invasion force. Numbers, positions, plans, weaknesses. Sir Heijin said slowly, I think we need to consider the possibility that human space is not as abandoned as we thought. Dongwu felt a chill run down his spine. Are you telling me that humans are still alive? I am telling you that someone has been watching us since the moment we entered this space. Someone with technology advanced enough to interfere with our systems without us noticing until now. The captain turned to stare at the main display, which showed the peaceful industrial world below them. Somewhere down there in those empty factories and abandoned cities, something was watching them. Something that had spent 300 years learning to hide, to observe, to wait. All ships maintain current positions, Dongwu ordered. I want full sensor sweeps of every structure, every facility, every building. If there is anyone down there, I want to know about it. But even as he gave the orders, Dongwu knew that their sensors were compromised. Whatever was watching them had already proven it could blind their instruments at will. Hunters had become the hunted. They had not even realized it was happening. As night fell on Kepler 44b, the Veltari invasion force settled into defensive positions. But they were not defending against an enemy they could see. They were defending against an enemy that had been studying them for a week, learning their patterns, understanding their weaknesses, and preparing a response that would demonstrate why the galaxy had learned to fear human space. The invasion was about to become something very different. Something that would remind the galaxy why some doors should never be opened, and why some species should never be disturbed. Lieutenant Commander Jin Wu had always been proud of his analytical abilities. As a member of the HFY species, he possessed superior pattern recognition skills that made him invaluable as a tactical analyst. But the patterns he was discovering in the invasion data filled him with a growing sense of dread. Jinwu sat in his small office aboard the Iron Talon, surrounded by holographic displays showing weeks of system failures, communication delays, and sensor malfunctions. To most observers, the data would look like random equipment problems, but Jinwu could see the hidden structure beneath the chaos. Computer, display failure, timeline for weapon systems. He commanded. The hologram shifted to show a three-dimensional map of the fleet with red indicators marking each weapon malfunction. Jinwu studied the pattern carefully. The failures were not random at all. Every single weapon's malfunction had occurred when the affected ship was targeting a specific set of coordinates. Computer overlay sensor failure timeline. Blue indicators appeared on the map, showing when and where sensor systems had gone offline. Again, the pattern was clear. Sensors failed whenever they were about to detect something in a particular area, or when they were scanning specific types of structures. Computer, add communication delay incidents. Green markers filled the display. Ginwu felt his blood run cold as he saw the complete picture. The equipment failures were not accidents or environmental effects. They were strategic interventions designed to control what the invasion force could see, target, and communicate. Someone was herding them like animals. Jinwu activated his personal communicator. Commander Nayoung, I need to speak with you immediately. Priority Alpha. Nayoung arrived within minutes, her expression tense. What have you found? We are not dealing with equipment failures, Jinwu said. gesturing at the holographic display. We are dealing with systematic manipulation of our technology by an intelligence that understands our systems better than we do. Na Young studied. The patterns? Are you certain? Look at this data. Every failure serves a tactical purpose. We cannot see what they do not want us to see. We cannot target what they do not want us to target. We cannot communicate what they do not want us to communicate. But how is that possible? Our technology is the most advanced in the galaxy. Jinwoo shook his head. Apparently not. Whoever is doing this has had access to our systems since the moment we entered human space. They have been studying us, learning our protocols, and finding ways to control our equipment without us even knowing it. Meanwhile, on the surface of Kepler 442b, Sergeant Yunji was leading a reconnaissance team through what appeared to be an abandoned human city. The architecture was familiar yet disturbing. Buildings were designed for human proportions, but incorporated defensive features that suggested the inhabitants had expected to be attacked. "Sergeant, you need to see this," called Private Minho. From inside a large structure, EUNG entered what looked like a workshop filled with partially completed devices. Tables were covered with components that seemed designed to interface with alien technology. Veltari communication modules sat next to human-built adapters. HFY sensor arrays were connected to mysterious human processors. "They have been studying our technology," Yunji whispered. "For how long, Sergeant?" "Look at this," said another team member, Corporal Sojin. She was standing beside a wall covered with detailed diagrams of Veltari ship designs. Every class of vessel in their fleet was represented, complete with technical specifications, weapon placements, and structural weak points. "How did they get this information?" Yunji asked. "Ma'am, some of these designs are classified. Only our military engineers should have access to these details." Yunji felt a chill run through her body. "Are you saying they have been spying on us for years?" "I'm saying they know our ships better than we do." The team continued exploring the facility. Room after room contained evidence of extensive research into alien species and their technology. Not just Veltari equipment, but devices from dozens of different civilizations. The humans had been studying the entire galaxy, back on the Iron. Talon Jinwoo made a discovery that changed everything. He had been analyzing the communication delays, trying to understand how their quantum network was being intercepted. Quantum communications were supposed to be instantaneous and impossible to intercept without destroying the message. Computer analyzed the quantum signature variations in our recent transmissions. The display showed wave patterns that should have been identical for each message. Instead, Ginwoo saw subtle variations that suggested something impossible. The quantum states were being copied, analyzed, and then reconstructed before being allowed to continue to their destination. "Computer, how long would it take to develop technology capable of quantum message interception? Based on current galactic knowledge, such technology is theoretically impossible with existing physics models." "Computer, how long would it take to develop such technology if someone had 300 years to study quantum mechanics without interruption? Insufficient data to calculate. However, theoretical models suggest significant advances would be possible given extended research periods." Jinwoo realized the terrible truth. The humans had not spent 300 years hiding in fear. They had spent 300 years learning, developing, preparing for exactly this situation. His communicator chimed with an incoming message from Sergeant Yunji. "On the surface, Lieutenant Commander, we have found something you need to see. Immediately." "What is it, Sergeant?" "Sir, we are not exploring abandoned ruins. We are inside an active facility. The humans are here, and they have been watching us from the beginning." Jinwoo felt his world shift. "Explain." "The buildings are not empty, sir. They are camouflaged. We found hidden observation posts active, monitoring equipment, and communication arrays that are currently transmitting data. Transmitting to where? Unknown, sir? But based on the equipment we found, they have been recording everything we do, everything we say, and everything we plan." Ginwoo closed his eyes and tried to process the implications. "Sergeant, get your team out of there immediately. Turn to the ship, sir. There is something else." They intercepted a transmission that was not meant for us. It contains detailed specifications for every piece of equipment in our fleet, including weaknesses and vulnerabilities that our own engineers have not discovered yet. The revelation hit Jinwoo like a physical blow. Humans had not just been watching them, they had been analyzing their technology, finding flaws, and preparing countermeasures. Every ship in the invasion fleet was vulnerable to attacks that they could not even imagine. All teams, return to your ships immediately, Jinwoo ordered. We need to inform Captain Dongwoo. As the surface teams began their emergency evacuation, Jinwoo compiled his analysis into a report that would change the course of the invasion. The Veltari forces had not discovered an abandoned world full of ancient treasures. They had walked into a trap that had been prepared for centuries. The humans were not extinct. They were not primitive. They were not hiding in fear. They were apex predators who had spent 300 years perfecting the art of hunting entire civilizations without their prey ever knowing they were being stalked. The invasion was about to become something very different. Something that would demonstrate why the galaxy had learned to fear human space and why some species should never be disturbed from their chosen isolation. Jinwoo looked at his data one final time before sending his report to Captain Dongwoo. The patterns were clear, the evidence was overwhelming, and the conclusion was terrifying. Humanity had been waiting for them to come. Captain Dongwoo received Jinwoo's report while standing on the bridge of the Iron Talon as he read the analysis. His confident expression slowly changed to one of growing alarm. The evidence was clear and terrifying. His invasion force had not discovered abandoned human ruins. They had walked directly into a trap that had been centuries in the making. All ships, prepare for immediate withdrawal from human space, Dongwoo ordered into his communicator.
Code red.
Emergency protocols are now in effect. But even as he gave the order, Dongwoo knew they were already too late. The humans had been studying them for weeks, learning their systems, understanding their weaknesses, and preparing a response that would demonstrate exactly why the galaxy feared human space. The counterattack began subtly. Captain Zoomin was commanding the cruiser Void Piercer when his artificial intelligence started behaving strangely. The ship's computer, which had operated flawlessly for decades, suddenly began making unusual decisions. Captain, the navigation system has plotted a course to empty space, reported his helmsman. I tried to correct it, but the computer overrode my commands. Switch to manual navigation, Zoomin ordered. I tried, sir. The manual controls are not responding. The computer says it is following proper navigation protocols, but the destination coordinates do not match any known star system. Similar reports began flooding in from across the fleet. Weapons systems were targeting empty regions of space instead of potential threats. Life support systems were randomly adjusting atmospheric composition, making crew members dizzy and confused. Engineering computers were scheduling maintenance on equipment that was functioning perfectly while ignoring actual problems. Intelligence. Officer Unesio was analyzing the situation from her station aboard the flagship when she made a chilling discovery. Captain Dongwoo, I think I understand what is happening to our ships. Explain, Dongwoo said grimly. The humans have not just been studying our technology, they've been infiltrating it. Every system that entered human space has been quietly infected with adaptive programs that learned our computer languages, our protocols, and our security measures. Are you saying they have taken control of our ships? Not exactly, sir. They have convinced our ships that following human commands is the same as following our commands. Our computers think they are operating normally, but they are actually responding to instructions from human sources. Dongwoo felt cold fear creep through his body. How is that possible? The humans have had 300 years to study galactic technology. They probably understand our systems better than the engineers who built them. They found ways to speak to our computers in languages our computers trust completely. As if to prove her point, the main display screen flickered and began showing technical diagrams that none of the bridge crew had requested. The diagrams showed detailed schematics of the Iron Talon itself, complete with structural weak points, power distribution networks, and crew quarters layouts. Sir, These are classified blueprints, Nyang said in shock. How did they get access to our ship's technical specifications? They did not get access, Unesio replied quietly. They created them. Based on 3 weeks of observation, they have reverse-engineered our entire ship and probably our entire fleet. The humans began broadcasting on all frequencies. But instead of threats or demands for surrender, they transmitted something far more disturbing. Technical specifications. Detailed information about every ship in Dongwu's fleet, including crew numbers, weapon capabilities, shield frequencies, and most terrifying of all, the precise location and vulnerability of each vessel. Captain, they are not trying to destroy us, Jinwoo reported from his analysis station. They are demonstrating that they could destroy us whenever they choose to do so. What do you mean? Look at the broadcast data, sir. They know exactly where our ammunition is stored, where our power cores are located, where our life support systems are most vulnerable. They are proving that our surprise invasion was never a surprise at all. Engineer Heijin looked up from her console with a pale expression. Captain, I am detecting energy signatures approaching our position. Multiple contacts, moving at speeds that should be impossible. Veltari ships? Dongwu asked hopefully. Correct, sir. The signatures do not match any known technology in our databases. These ships are using propulsion systems that bend space around them in ways we did not think were possible. On the main display, shapes began to appear against the star field. The human ships were unlike anything in the galactic databases. They moved with fluid grace, seeming to flow through space rather than push against it. Their hulls were smooth and dark, reflecting starlight in patterns. That made them difficult to track visually, but the most disturbing thing about the human ships was not their appearance. It was their behavior. They did not attack. It simply approached each disabled vessel in Dongwu's fleet and began scanning them with beams of soft blue light. What are they doing? Nyang asked. They are studying us, Unesio replied. Just like they have been doing for 300 years. Learning, analyzing, understanding everything about us. Captain Suman's voice came over the communication system from the Void Piercer. Captain Dongwu, one of the human ships, is requesting permission to board. They are transmitting in perfect Veltari language with proper military protocols. Denied, Dongwu said immediately. Sir, they are not asking for permission. They are informing us that they will be boarding in exactly 10 minutes. They wanted to give us time to prepare our crew for inspection. Dongwu realized that his fleet was no longer under his command. The humans had taken control of their ships, their weapons, their communications, and now they were taking control of his crew. But they were doing it politely, professionally, and with perfect adherence. 2 galactic military customs? All ships prepare to repel boarders, Dongwu ordered desperately. Sir, our weapon systems are not responding, Heijin reported. The humans have disabled our ability to fight back, but they left our life support and communication systems fully operational. Why would they do that? Ginwu looked up from his console with understanding and fear in his eyes. Because they want us to survive this encounter, sir. They want us to go home and tell everyone what happened here. We are not prisoners of war. We are messengers. The human ships began docking with vessels throughout the fleet. Their boarding procedures were flawless, following standard galactic protocols that they should not have known. But somehow, they knew everything. As the first human boarding party prepared to enter the Iron Talon, Dongwu realized that his invasion had become something entirely different. He was no longer a conqueror exploring abandoned ruins. He was a specimen being studied by apex predators who had spent centuries preparing for this exact moment. The hunt had begun, and humanity's prey was finally beginning to understand just how long they had been stalked, how thoroughly they had been studied, and how completely they had been outmatched from the very beginning. The invasion of human space was about to become a demonstration that would change the galaxy forever. A demonstration of why some species choose isolation not from weakness, but from an understanding of their own dangerous nature. And Captain Dongwu was about to meet the species that had spent 300 years learning how to be the perfect hunters of civilizations. What happened next was not a battle, it was a systematic demonstration of why the galaxy had learned to fear humanity 3 centuries ago. The humans did not destroy Captain Dongwu's fleet. Instead, they dismantled it with surgical precision. While broadcasting every action live to the Galactic Council, Chief Engineer Hajin watched from her station as human vessels moved through the disabled fleet like predators among helpless prey. But these predators showed no interest in killing. They approached each ship with calm professionalism, as if this was simply another day's work for them. "Captain, they are broadcasting our situation to every major government in the galaxy," Communications Officer Jin Woo reported. "Transmission is going out on all diplomatic frequencies with full video documentation." "What are they showing?" Dongwu asked, though he feared the answer. "Everything, sir. Our disabled ships, our helpless crew, our complete inability to resist or escape. They are demonstrating their capabilities to the entire galaxy using us as examples. The first human boarding party entered the Iron Talon through the main airlock. They moved with quiet efficiency, their equipment unlike anything in the galactic databases. Their leader was a tall human with calm eyes who introduced himself as Commander Park Minho. "Captain Dongwu," the human said in perfect Veltari language, "I am here to conduct a standard inspection of your vessel. Please have your crew remain at their stations and cooperate fully." "This is an act of war," Dongwu declared, trying to maintain some authority. "No, Captain, this is an act of education," Commander Park replied politely. "We are teaching the galaxy why human space has been marked as forbidden territory for 300 years. The human boarding teams move through the ships with knowledge. That should have been impossible. They knew the location of every critical system, every security checkpoint, every crew quarter. They moved as if they had built the ships themselves." Captain Suman found himself face to face with a human boarding party on the Void Piercer. The team leader, a woman who identified herself as Lieutenant Colonel Kim Yan-soo, conducted her inspection with terrifying competence. "Your reactor core is operating at 87% efficiency," she told Suman conversationally. "Could improve that to 94% by adjusting the plasma containment field harmonics. Would you like us to make those adjustments? How do you know about our reactor specifications?" Suman asked in amazement. "We have been observing your fleet for 3 weeks. Your ships are well designed but could benefit from several improvements. For example, your shield generators would be 30% more effective if you modified the frequency modulation patterns." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because we want you to understand that we are not your enemies, Captain. We are simply beings who prefer to be left alone." Throughout the fleet, similar conversations were taking place. Humans systematically disabled every weapon system while explaining exactly how they were doing it. They jammed all communications except for one frequency that broadcast directly to the Galactic Council. They demonstrated technologies that should not have existed while maintaining perfect politeness and professionalism. Dr. Lee Soo-jin, the human expedition's chief scientist, explained to captured officers why humanity had chosen Isolation 3. Centuries ago, she spoke to a group of senior Veltari officers in a cargo bay that had been converted into a temporary briefing room. "We did not withdraw from galactic society because we were afraid," she explained calmly. "We withdrew because we recognized our own nature. Humans are adaptation specialists. We solve problems by understanding them completely." "What does that mean?" asked Commander Nayoung. "It means that when we encounter other species, we cannot help but study them. We learn their languages, their customs, their technologies, their weaknesses. We do this not from malice, but because it is our nature to understand everything around us." "That does not sound threatening," said Engineer Hajin. "Does it not?" Dr. Lee asked. "Imagine living next to a species that knows more about your technology than you do. A species that can predict your behavior better than you can. A species that can solve your problems before you know you have them. How long would it take before you began to feel like specimens in a laboratory?" The officers fell silent as they understood the implications. "We realized that our presence in the galaxy was changing other species in ways that were not healthy for them," Dr. Lee continued. "Some began to depend on us to solve their problems. Others became fearful and aggressive. None remained truly independent." "So you left," Nayoung said quietly. "We chose isolation to preserve the independence and dignity of other species. and to preserve our own nature without becoming a threat to galactic peace. The demonstration continued for 3 days. The humans systematically examined every ship in the fleet, cataloged every piece of technology, and documented every crew member. But they did so with such politeness and professionalism that it felt more like a medical examination than a military occupation. On the final day, the humans began releasing the fleet. They returned control of each ship's systems while providing detailed technical manuals for improved operation. They unlocked the weapon systems, but left clear evidence that they could disable them again at any time. Most importantly, they programmed the navigation systems with a direct course back to Veltari space. Commander Park Minho addressed Captain Dongwu on the bridge of the Iron Talon before departing. Captain, you and your crew have been extremely cooperative during this inspection. We want you to return home safely and share your experiences with your government and the Galactic Council. What happens if we refuse to leave? Dongwu asked. You are free to make that choice, Commander Park replied. But you should understand that human space is monitored by systems that make your current technology look primitive. Any ship that enters our territory will be detected, studied, and dealt with according to the threat level it represents. Are you threatening us? We are informing you of the facts. Humans prefer peace and isolation. But we are prepared for any alternative that other species might choose to force upon us. As the human boarding parties returned to their ships, they left behind detailed reports of everything they had discovered about Veltari technology, biology, and psychology. The reports were not classified. They were addressed to the Galactic Council with copies for every major government in known space. The message was clear. Humanity had demonstrated their capabilities using minimal force and maximum restraint. They had proven that they could disable, capture, or destroy any fleet that entered their space, but they chose mercy instead of violence, education instead of extermination. Captain Dongwu sat in his command chair as the Iron Talon began its journey back to Veltari space. His fleet was intact, his crew was unharmed, but his understanding of the galaxy had been forever changed. The humans had not conquered them. They had simply reminded the galaxy why some species choose isolation not from weakness, but from an understanding of their own terrible strength and the wisdom to use it responsibly. The demonstration was over, but its effects would reshape galactic politics for centuries to come. The aftermath of the Dongwu incident changed everything in galactic politics. Ambassador Taman stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council, delivering humanity's formal message to every species in known space. The Great Chamber was packed with representatives who had watched the live broadcasts of the demonstration in human space. The human government has asked me to convey their position regarding recent events. Taman announced to the silent assembly. They wish to re-establish the understanding that existed 3 centuries ago, but with updated terms that reflect current galactic realities. Elder Byung-ho sat in his traditional place of honor, watching the faces of representatives from across the galaxy. Some looked fearful, others appeared angry, but most showed the deep thoughtfulness that came from witnessing something that challenged their understanding of the universe. A holographic projection activated in the center of the chamber. The image showed Dr. Choi Yensu, speaking from somewhere within human space. Her appearance was calm and professional. Her words carried the weight of absolute authority. Members of the Galactic Council, she began, humanity values the isolation we have maintained for 3 centuries. Recent events have demonstrated that this isolation benefits all species, not just our own. The Veltari representative, newly appointed after Admiral Dongwu's disgrace, spoke up. Dr. Choi, your people held our fleet hostage and violated our sovereign rights. Your fleet violated clearly marked quarantine boundaries and invaded territory. That has been forbidden for 300 years, Dr. Choi replied without emotion. Our response was measured, educational, and resulted in 0 casualties. We could have chosen differently. The weight of that statement settled over the chamber. Like a heavy blanket, everyone had seen the broadcasts. Everyone understood what chosen differently meant. We offer a new arrangement, Dr. Choi continued. Human space remains absolutely forbidden to all other species. No exceptions, no negotiations, no special circumstances. In exchange, humanity will provide technological solutions to three current galactic crises. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The three crises she mentioned were problems that had been troubling the galaxy for decades without solution. The energy shortage affecting the Outer Rim territories will be resolved within 30 days, Dr. Choi announced. We will provide technology that converts background cosmic radiation into usable power. The conversion rate will be sufficient to supply all Outer Rim colonies indefinitely.
Oh, yes.
The representative from the Outer Rim Alliance nearly fell from his chair. That is impossible. Our best scientists have worked on radiation conversion for 50 years with minimal success. Your scientists have been working with limited understanding of quantum field interactions, Dr. Choi replied. We have had 3 centuries to study the problem. The plague affecting the Kethrali homeworld will be cured within 60 days. She continued. We will provide medicine that adapts to biological variations and eliminates the pathogen without side effects. Elder Byung-ho leaned forward. Dr. Choi, our medical researchers have been unable to develop effective treatments because the plague mutates faster than we can develop countermeasures. Yes, we observed your research efforts. The solution requires medicine that evolves alongside the pathogen. We developed such technology 200 years ago when we faced a similar crisis. The final announcement stunned the entire assembly. Quantum storm threatening the core trade routes will be neutralized within 90 days. We will provide devices that predict storm patterns and redirect their energy harmlessly into empty space. The trade route crisis had been building for years. The quantum storms were growing stronger and more frequent, threatening to cut off commerce between the galaxy's most important systems. These solutions will be provided freely, Dr. Choi said. We ask for nothing in return except absolute respect for human space boundaries. Ambassador Taman stepped forward. The human government has also provided detailed specifications for care border monitoring. New detection systems will be placed around human space that can identify and track any vessel approaching the quarantine zone. What happens if someone ignores the warnings? Asked the Veltari representative nervously. Dr. Choi's expression remained unchanged. It's the same thing that happened to Admiral Dongwu's fleet. Education, demonstration, and safe return home. However, repeated violations will be met with increasingly comprehensive responses. The chamber fell silent as representatives considered the implications. Humanity was offering incredible gifts while making it clear that their isolation was non-negotiable over. The following months, the promised solutions arrived exactly on schedule. The energy crisis in the Outer Rim was solved by devices that seemed to pull power from empty space itself. The Kethrali plague was eliminated by medicine that adapted to each patient's unique biology. The quantum storms were tamed by technology that redirected stellar-level energy with precision that defied understanding. Each solution came with detailed technical documentation, but the documentation only explained how to operate the devices, not how to build them. The underlying principles remained mysterious. Demonstrating the vast gap between human science and galactic knowledge, Elder Byung-ho found himself appointed as the Council's senior advisor on human affairs. His first task was establishing new protocols for the enhanced quarantine around human space. We must understand that humanity's isolation is not weakness, he explained to younger council members. It is wisdom. They have chosen restraint not because they fear us, but because they understand the consequences of not exercising restraint. Captain Dongwu, stripped of his rank and exiled from military service, became an unexpected voice of caution. He traveled between worlds, speaking to military academies and government officials about his experiences in human space. They did not defeat us with superior weapons, he would tell his audiences. They defeated us with superior understanding. They knew everything about us before we knew anything about them. That is the advantage of 3 centuries of patient observation. His talks always ended with the same warning. Humans chose isolation to protect us from themselves. They understand their own nature better than we understand ours. The galaxy is safer because they choose to remain alone. The new equilibrium settled over galactic civilization like a comfortable blanket. Trade flourished with the quantum storms under control. The Outer Rim colonies prospered with unlimited energy. The Kethrali recovered from their plague and returned. Two galactic affairs. But everyone understood that this prosperity came with a price. Human space remained forbidden, watched over by detection systems that could track a single ship across multiple star systems. The warnings were clear, the consequences were known, and the galaxy had learned to respect the boundaries that humanity had chosen. Ambassador Timon often stood in his office, looking out at the stars and remembering the ancient stories his grandfather had told him, stories about the time before the Great Silence. When humans walked among other species, and the galaxy learned to fear their quiet intelligence, now the galaxy lived in peace, because humanity had chosen wisdom over dominance, restraint over conquest, and isolation over influence. The cost of disturbing human space had been demonstrated, measured, and understood. Some doors, Timon reflected, were meant to remain closed. Some species were dangerous precisely because they chose not to be, and some gifts were best appreciated. From a respectful distance, the galaxy remembered the cost, and the galaxy chose peace.